But I suppose when I got to school, my sort of senior school at the age of 12, it was a remarkable place. It's a monastic foundation, Winchester College, which was founded in the 1380s and based very much on a monastic tradition. So there was a courtyard, a chapel, a cloister, and it was ora et labora, pray and work, and that was how the thing started. And I found it all very appealing. The thing that really did it for me was religious music, which I'd never come across. The idea of music, as I'd been introduced to it at home, was that it had a sort of program that you needed to decode, because children are often introduced to these things, in my view, the wrong way. So instead of being taught to appreciate the music and just enjoy the music, they're taught to look for what the hidden meaning is. So you have things like Peter and the Wolf, The Sorcerer's Apprentice, and all these pieces that tell a story. And I found myself really loving Bach and Beethoven's chamber music and thinking, but I don't understand it. And somebody said to me, what is it you don't understand? You know, and I said, well, I don't know what it's saying. And, you know, it had to be explained to me that it didn't have to say anything in that way, because that's the way I'd been sort of led. By my parents, actually. I mean, not at all by my schooling, but there you go. These things stick a bit. And so getting to hear this absolutely unbelievably beautiful music of Tallis and Bird, Palestrina, Victoria, the whole 16th century polyphony just blew me away, as we say nowadays. It really did. That and the sheer beauty of the monastic buildings, the sense of an old tradition, the sense that this was a place where people had prayed for a long time. Some of them were quite well known. One of them was a famous dissenting bishop in the 17th century, whose name, scrawled as a schoolchild into the stone wall of the cloister, you could see. The sense of being part of a tradition, the sense that life extends enormously backwards and forwards from us, that we're not these isolated beings just plonked onto the planet, but form part of a story. And that much of that story had to do with the wealth of meaning brought to it by the church, with its rituals, with its holidays and feasts and celebrations, with its wonderful texts, the King James Bible and the Psalms and all the wisdom literature, the beauty of this music and so forth, just seemed to me to speak of something so deep that I'd never been prepared to encounter. It immediately captivated me, and I started reading, probably a very unhealthy thing for a 14-year-old. I remember being taken by my family to Spain on holiday, and I was reading the 4 Degrees of Passionate Charity by St. Richard of St. Victor, which is, well, it's not in the top 10 sellers at airports. And that was the way I asked for people to give me recommendations of things to read, and fortunately I was surrounded by people who did, some of them of my own age, who were also very interested in these things. And my housemaster, it was a boarding school, who was really in some ways more of a father to me than my own father, in terms of shaping me, was fortunately a man who was in a very non-demonstrative way religious, had a fantastic sense of humour, and loved the sort of poetry that I love, and guided me again to read things. It was like being put in a sort of Aladdin's cave, and you know, being allowed to explore all the chests with all their jewels in them, except these jewels were books, and a lot of them were I suppose spiritual texts of one kind or another, which have always seemed to me very deep.
Did your parents approve of your religious leanings, although they were both not into?
Well, yes. I mean, they didn't know what to make of it. They weren't discouraging exactly, although my father was, you know, I mean, he made a lot of practical remarks, which I think are perfectly fair about it. But they didn't stand in my way, no. But what happened was that over time I became less and less convinced that I wanted to sort of sign up to or at least what in those days I thought I'd be asked to sign up to in terms of beliefs. I felt I couldn't really do that. And it's probably a very good thing, because I have a curious divergent streak in my personality, in that there are aspects of me that are very drawn to asceticism, and there are others that are extremely drawn to pleasure. And I've only lately realized that this is in fact what Epicurus was about, not about who was a so-called hedonist philosopher, but his idea of hedonism was not gluttony and self-indulgence, but about having a life that is pleasurable, often through self-restraint and doing things for other people and so forth. So it's another path really towards the sort of morally well-centered life, the fulfilling and virtuous life.